All right, welcome back to another episode of Johnny on the Track. And my guest today is kind of right now a renaissance man in all things NASCAR media. I got him laughing a little bit there. We were talking before the show, but I'm a big fan of his. I'm loving what he's doing for our sport. He is a Sirius XM NASCAR producer. He's a contributor for Front Stretch. He's a podcaster. He's the host of the Victory Lane podcast. And of course, he is a TikTok star, and he is Davey Segal. Davey, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
I would not say TikTok star, but it's your show, so it's your rules. Thank you. I appreciate you having me on, man.
He's a TikTok star. He's not. He's different than what you would say as an Addison Ray. I don't know any. I really don't know any.
First time that I've been in the same sense as Addison Ray. I will say that.
But we love what he does. So, man, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Let's get right into it. So I want to know, obviously you're doing a lot of different stuff, kind of all in motorsports, but like how long has motorsports and NASCAR been a part of your life?
Well, we were just talking about how old I am. I'm 25 right now. I was born in 96 and I started watching NASCAR in 2001 when I was 4 or 5 years old. I was too young to comprehend anything that was going on.
Right.
But I would say 2002 is kind of my first memories of watching NASCAR. And when I got into the sport, I was a big Kevin Harvick fan growing up because in 2002, he ran a special paint scheme that had ET on the car at Bristol for the Xfinity race, or what was then the Busch Series, and Cup. And I remember that I saw that car and I was freaking out. And I said, Mom, oh my God, ET's on the car. That's crazy. And my dad was a big NASCAR fan, so it was always on. He always went to races. And it kind of grew into a very unhealthy obsession from there. And when I realized at a certain point that I wasn't really going to make it as a driver because I didn't live in the right place, I didn't know the right people, I wanted to go to college and get a degree that way. You know how it is, right?
Yep.
It's a lot of different factors that go into trying to make it in the business, especially on the driving side. I decided to pivot a little bit, go down the media route, and made that kind of my next chapter in life, so to speak. So I guess doing the math, I've been following NASCAR for almost 2 full decades, even though I probably have only understood what was happening for one, but it's been a part of my life for as long as I can remember.
That's awesome, man. And it's funny you bring up the ET thing. I do remember, well, again, I don't also remember that scheme, but I know of it. But I do remember, I think it was Jeff Gordon probably in 05, right around then. He ran, and I was a Jeff Gordon fan growing up. He ran an episode 3 Star Wars team. And I think he even ran like a Phantom Menace too.
And there's a bunch of random movie paint schemes.
Right.
With like A-list drivers too, which is pretty cool.
Exactly. And you see that stuff and it sticks with you and you're like, it's the same. It's honestly, it's the Kyle Busch effect with the 18 and the M&Ms, you know, like you see that and it's like a defining moment for you into the sport. But it's funny you say that because I vividly remember those paint schemes of like that kind of just define who you are, who you support and all that. But let's take it so you said you wanted to take a different path. You went to college, went to the media. When was that point where it was like, this is what I want to do. I want to be part of the media. I want to cover this. I want to create my own content. When did that all click?
I would say probably freshman year of college at some point. I went to Michigan State University and I went in with the goal of being the next Bob Pockrass, which nobody's ever going to be the next Bob.
No, but nobody.
I just went in and I was saying, I just want to write about NASCAR. That's all I want to do. Just want to write about it, be a reporter. Cause I did some online blogging in high school leading up to college. And that's kind of what set me on the trajectory to major in journalism, go down that path. And then I joined the campus radio station as a freshman. And the director of the sports station at that time took a liking to me and said, hey, why don't you start your own NASCAR podcast? I didn't really know what a podcast was at that point. So I said, okay, sure, whatever. Let's do this. listening back to those, which I don't think are available anymore on the internet, which kind of pains me, but is also probably a good thing. Jesus, was I bad. But that was fun because I got to just talk about whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, however I wanted, made a ton of mistakes, sounded horrible, but got reps and got some experience under my belt. And I went from being just a print reporter in terms of what I wanted to be into kind of forming into a multimedia reporter, journalist type person that we say in the business. Multimedia was like a buzzword for my 4 years of college. And I said, all right, so I want to write a little bit, but I also want to maybe try this radio thing out, be a radio host, do pit reporting, whatever. And as I started doing that more, got some more reps under my belt, started doing some on-camera stuff for some of my journalism classes. I did not think I was good. Thought I had a face for radio because that's what everybody tells me. Because
no, oh come on, no.
Only my mom thinks I don't, but I do. Trust me. Anyways, so I started doing that, and one of my professors kind of pulled me to the side and said, "Hey, you're really good at that." And I thought that they were joking. I was like, "Yeah, thanks," but she was adamant, and she said, "Hey, like you're pretty good at this." So I started doing more of it. I really enjoyed it. And I started doing more of that stuff for NASCAR. And even though it wasn't for campus programming, it wasn't for any specific NASCAR website, I just got more reps on camera. And then once I graduated, as you know, you can go kind of one of two ways in the journalism or media realm. You can get your degree, and then if you want to make it in television or in local news, newspaper, whatever, you can go to a small market, cut your teeth there, do your thing with local reporting and try to work your way up step by step. Or you can do it a different way, any other way. And I chose to do the latter of those two, just because at that point in my life, moving to wherever, Wyoming, North Dakota, Nebraska, Pennsylvania, it didn't appeal to me.
Monroe, Louisiana. Shout out my best friend from college, Tyler Englander, who was also a journalism major.
There you go, Tyler.
He took the first route where he wants to be in sports media. He took the route which you're talking about. So sorry to interrupt, but
more power to him, because I got a ton of friends that do that are still doing that. Like my big in my fraternity, who's 2-3 years older than me, he's still cutting his teeth at some local markets. He's worked his way up already, but I got so much respect for people that choose to go down that route. And I got a ton of really close friends that are doing it right now and kicking ass at it. But that's just not something I wanted to do.
Right.
And I liked being in this area, in the DC area. I had an internship at what was then CSN Mid-Atlantic, now is NBC Sports Washington. Had an offer to go back to work there on a freelance basis as a production assistant. Had been working at Front Stretch throughout this whole time. Also freelancing at NASCAR. Parlayed those different opportunities into some other stuff, because when you get older, finances become a factor, and you can't just do things for opportunities, and you can't just work for free. You need a paycheck to pay bills, to buy fancy microphones like this. And so kind of just morphed into there. And I know that was probably a very long answer to a short question, but it brought me to where I am here, and I still got a lot to go. That's for sure. Because I'm not a TikTok star yet. I'm just on the cusp.
So all right, fair enough. We'll keep you on the cusp, because that makes you want to work harder and get to that stardom. No, but you said, long answer to a short question, but I actually really appreciate that, because it's funny how similar kind of our paths seem to be. I went to Emerson College for not journalism, just because it's not like I don't love to write, but I love to share my ideas and communicate with people. So I chose the path of sports communication and did similar things. Got to be a part of the radio stations, called a lot of games like basketball, soccer, all that kind of stuff.
Did all the same stuff.
Exactly. And again, I went with your path, which is continue. I have a full-time job in something else. But I still love to do this. I still love to communicate. I love to be a part of the motorsports community. And man. So we were talking before the show. It's like, when I see someone like you who's building their way, making their way up, it inspires someone like me who really wants to get into it any way they can. And I think that's important, because we need more guys like me and you that want to share and put our sport on the forefront, because I think we saw it have a hype. and then it kind of went down a little bit. But I feel like now it's really starting to catch back up. And I think, going into what we're doing now, at this time, I think it's important. I really do.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's interesting to think about too, because, I mentioned how for a decade of my life, I was a fan of NASCAR, but I didn't really understand what was happening. I was too young to comprehend everything that was going
Right.
on. Just so happens that that period of time was when NASCAR was at its biggest, and that was
Mhm.
the boom in the mid 2000s, early 2010s. And I was understanding what was happening. I watched every race. I was a rabid fan. I was buying diecast every single day, still am now. But I wish that I could go back to that time, having the perspective that I do now, to kind of soak it in and realize what was
Yeah.
happening. I mean, in the DC area, my dad and I went to Dover twice a year, went to Richmond twice a year. We started going to Daytona around 2010. And going to Dover now to cover it as a media member and seeing the grandstands, a third full, half full, that's just a sign of the times and where we are. It's not just
Mhm.
NASCAR, it's sports across the board. But to think back in 2002, when I went to my first race ever at Dover, I don't remember it really.
Right.
But the fact that all those grandstands were full with no banners covering the seats before they took out some of the seats blows my mind. And my dad always told me stories about how he found this parking spot that was in the boonies, and we would like walk 2 miles to get from our spot to the track to beat the traffic. And he mapped out all these escape routes before GPS and cell phones. It kind of, how it is. There's a ton of nostalgia in sports, but I think
Yeah.
NASCAR especially, I think that's starting to erode away a little bit,
Yep.
because I think the worst days are kind of behind us, so to speak. Brighter days are ahead, and it all starts with the Clash of the Coliseum here. And I guess as of when we're talking, a couple weeks, which is pretty wild.
Couple weeks, which is absolutely wild because time seems to fly. And it really is interesting what you say there. It's like, imagine being at I don't remember the year, but like Jeff Gordon when he won the inaugural Brickyard, like stuff
Yeah, I
like
think that
that.
was 96 or 98, whatever it was.
And you see that and you're like,
94.
my God, like imagine being at something like that. And
Crazy.
obviously, even like New Hampshire used to fill the stands, and I go now and it's like half full. But again, we are in what I think is, I don't want to call it the second boom, but you can tell like doing stuff like this, the Clash,
Call it the next gen.
the next gen, there it is, which we'll talk about. But
Yeah.
you do start to sit like doing something like the Clash, like having who's going to be Ice Cube at
Oh
one of the
yeah.
intermission,
I'm
like
so hyped for that.
that's cool. I mean, that's really cool, and it shows that, like I said before, like you and I getting into this stuff at this time, I think it does help. But we'll move forward a little bit. Let's go. So I mentioned TikTok star, but we're not going to say star. We're not going to say it. Um, Talk to me about how this idea came about, and for those who are watching and probably might not know what Davey does. So what he does is, it'll be post race, maybe the day after, and he will kind of do a recap, and he'll kind of like play what happened in the, he'll play a driver. Let's say Joey Logano crashed. He'll show like kind of Joey crashing, the
Sorry, I'm
reaction
not
and
wearing
all
my
that.
Joey glasses right now.
Exactly. And he goes through the whole race, and it lines up with kind of what happened in the race, and it's really entertaining. It's funny. So got to fill the viewers in that might not have seen. But Davey, how did that come about? And then I also want to know, have you gotten any pushback from any drivers to be like, oh, come, what are you doing?
Yeah. So I'll take the first one, the first question first. How it started, I actually stole the idea
Oh,
from
wow.
a girl named Annie Agar, who did it first and still does it very well for football. She did
Okay.
NFL Zoom meetings, at the start or the middle of the pandemic, as it's still going on. I say that as it's over. But she had the idea first of essentially acting like teams or players,
Right.
coaches, whatever, referees, putting on their different jerseys, colors, etc., and making fun of them, lighthearted, recapping the week of games. Did the same thing for college football. And I thought, just on a whim, before the 2021 Daytona 500, it was literally just a thought. I said, I don't know, maybe I could do that for NASCAR. I feel like I could maybe convey to the viewers or the fan base, people like us, maybe our age, since TikTok skews younger, maybe I can appeal to people like that. Cause I didn't have TikTok on my phone. I didn't want it because it was so addicting. I would just sit in bed and scroll on my girlfriend's phone for hours. I didn't want that on my phone. So I was like pushing back on it, but I decided to do it. And kind of like my first ever podcast when I was a freshman in college, I look back on my first TikTok now and I'm like, oh my God, that was awful. Where is your energy? Where's the editing? Like, it was awful. But I just decided to do that on a whim. And I told Annie as well. I said, hey, I stole your idea. Just letting you know ahead of time, like, it's not going to be as big as you. It's not going to be as good as you, but I want to let you know that, like, I'm not claiming this as my property. Like, this is your thing.
Right.
You left me on red, but that's fine. So I just decided to do that. And it became way bigger than I ever imagined.
It's huge. It's
sometimes
huge.
Sometimes I'll do something and I'll say, okay, that might be funny. And then sometimes I'll do something, I'll be like, I don't think this is that good. I have to post it because you got to do it every week, but I don't really think it's that good. And everybody loves it. So much so that, NASCAR enjoyed it and they picked it up for their TikTok channel for the last 10 races of the year for the playoffs.
Awesome.
So that was really cool. And even the last one that I did a Formula One recap of the Abu Dhabi race.
Mm-hmm.
And it's at 350,000 views. Like, I don't understand. And for some people, that's nothing, like Addison Ray, who for some reason you put me in the same sentence as, but that's crazy to me. So anyways, that's a really fun project that I really thoroughly enjoyed doing. It takes a long time. It takes a lot of effort and choreographing and editing and everything, but I really enjoy it. And my goal of it, and I tell this to people all the time, is to just make people laugh,
which
make people smile for a couple minutes a week. And it's supposed to be lighthearted humor. I think most, if not all, the drivers understand that it's supposed to be lighthearted humor and it's fun, it's easygoing, nothing malicious there. There's one driver that I will not name them, but they were pretty unhappy with how I portrayed them, and they voiced those concerns to me. I would like to have a conversation with them face to face, but because of COVID and not being at the track, that hasn't been able to happen. But so far, I think there's only one driver that has not been too happy. And working for SiriusXM, Joey Logano sometimes hops on our Zoom calls when he goes behind the wheel on the morning drive for an hour at a time. And the first time that he hopped on the Zoom that I was working, I was kind of worried. I was saying,
oh yeah.
I was like, oh, does he know about this? Does he hate me for this, for literally making fun of him and saying, Frank, all the time? But he either didn't know or didn't care. So for the most part, everybody's a great sport about it. And there's been a lot of drivers as well from Cup, Xfinity trucks that have reached out or seen me and said, hey, that's really funny. Keep doing it. It's great. So I enjoy that people enjoy it. And as long as people enjoy them, I'll keep doing them.
No, it's awesome. It really is. And when I saw it, I was like, man, like, what an idea. What a way to bring in people that like probably might not even care about NASCAR, but can watch that and be like, oh, that's entertaining. That's funny. Yeah. Like, maybe it'll bring them into the sport and say, oh, I should watch one of these things.
That'd be awesome.
And it's lighthearted. I mean, if all these drivers should be able to laugh at themselves, and I think you do a great job of, letting them be able to laugh at themselves, whether, if you have a bad race, I feel like a lot of these drivers have a short memory. And I feel like when they look at that, they're like, oh, that's funny. Like, yeah, what a crap day, like, let's just move past it and sort of something like that. So,
right.
Yeah, man, I'm a huge fan of those. So keep it up.
Thank you.
Let's move to 2022. We've got a couple things I want to go over. So the first is, we mentioned the next gen car. Just give me kind of your quick expectations of, one, what you think of the racing, and then two, kind of what you might expect to see like throughout the season, with, maybe if you think there's any drivers that might, the next gen car might help them. Talk to me about that.
3 words that I think you're going to hear a lot from me this year and from everybody. I don't know.
Okay.
I just don't.
That's fair.
The next gen car it's been beaten into the ground to a pulp, but there are so many unknowns with it that I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if Kyle Larson is going to come out and win 10 races again. Mm-hmm. He could go out there and win 20. He really could. He could go out there and win none. He really could. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be as much of an equalizer as some people expect it to be. My hunch would be no, because I think the bigger teams with the most money, with the most resources, with the best talent are going to remain that. And that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps ahead of the smaller teams. That's not to say that JTG Doherty, front row, insert B or C tier team here, is going to be able to run better and more competitively and maybe get a couple more top 10s or top 5s throughout the season, because overall, compared to the Gen 6 car and all the generations before, the playing field will be a little bit more level. But I don't think it's going to be, as some people perceive it to be, that, you're going to go to Atlanta Motor Speedway. That's a bad example because I just repaved. You're going to go to Charlotte, right? A 670 horsepower track, 1.5 miles, where you need to handle, you need grip, you need talent, everything. I don't think you're going to go there and you're going to have Michael McDowell in a front row motorsports car be running comparable lap times to Chase Elliott. I don't think you're going to see that. I think what you will see, though, is on a track like Charlotte or like Michigan, or even a short track like Martinsville, Bristol, you may see the gap lessened a little bit. I don't think that you're going to see them, banging quarter panels coming down to the start finish line and Michael McDowell's racing a Hendrick car. But I think that you could see McDowell knocking on the door of top 15s, top 10s more regularly. And if that happens for a team like Front Row or JTG or even Trackhouse expanding to a 2-car team this year, then in due time, those drivers not only get more experience up front, but the teams get more data for their notebooks, because every team from the top to bottom, they're starting at square one with this next gen car. They don't have any notes. And it's kind of crazy to think, but we're recording this in mid to late January. Everything that these teams have had only 2 months ago doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
It means Jack, you know what? They're not even going to look at those notebooks because everything is completely different. And the fact that there's all these supply chain issues and we're going to the Clash at the Coliseum where you're going to bang some doors and you're going to wreck some race cars. Then you're going to Daytona and you got the dual races, you got practice sessions, you got qualifying, and then you have the race. You could go through one points paying race and be really low, if not maxed out on your next gen inventory.
Wow.
And NASCAR said before that, they were hoping to have 4 to 5 cars for each team. So that would mean RCR, a 2-car team, would have 10 total. But right now, with the supply chain issues and the parts shortage, that's not a realistic number for them right now. So you may see a bit of a different speed weeks leading up to the 500. You may not see as much aggression as we've seen in past years. Although if you're Ricky Stenhouse Jr., I'm sure you're going to be plenty aggressive. He always is. But I think there's a lot of storylines to watch for the entirety of the season. But I think we're going to maybe have to take it in chapters and in spurts and say, okay, right now we have a supply chain issue and there's not as many cars as teams would like. That means that people may not be as aggressive as they want to be. We get through the summer stretch past the Coke 600. All teams have a notebook of information. And you may say, okay, Hendrick still has the stranglehold on the top spot. But you know who's doing really well this year? Stewart-Haas. They've picked up their game. Penske's fallen back. These are all hypotheticals. But the fact that I don't know what's going to happen, the crew chiefs don't know what's going to happen, the drivers don't know, people way smarter than me have no idea, because this next gen car presents so many variables. And until we see it on track for an extended period of time and get more sample sizes, we're just not going to know.
That's interesting. That's like a really interesting point with the supply chain stuff. And I did hear about that they wanted increased numbers of cars, like, around 5. And yeah, I mean, just like hearing that again, when hearing you say that, like, man, I don't know if I don't know if that can happen off the bat with all those issues. And the way I see it too, like, I feel like this season will play out where you're going to see someone, maybe it's Kyle Larson, maybe it's Hendrick, maybe it's Stewart-Haas, but you're going to see the one team or manufacturer, I think, figure out a little quicker than everyone else. So, and honestly, I feel like we're going to see a lot like what we saw with this season, where there was a lot of parity in different winners, but in the end, like, one driver was, leaps and bounds ahead of everyone else. And even one team, Hendrick was leaps and bounds literally ahead of all the other teams. And I think, maybe Hendrick struggles, like, because we don't know like what this next gen car is, how it handles, going 3 wide in the let's say when the track cools, right? Like, we don't know that, and that comes with data. But from what I think, And from what I'm hearing, I feel like it's going to be something like that, where a team, a manufacturer is going to figure it out a little quicker and be able to get the results. But at the same time, like, we don't know. I hope there's more parity. I really do. If like a front row can make up a half a second, on those big teams, like, that's awesome. I mean, that does a lot for small teams in general, sponsors, and then for the fans. I mean, the pleasure of just watching like the races get a little closer. But that's really interesting. I'm glad you shared all that with me. So let's go. I want to end on this note. I want to do some predictions. So the first prediction I want you to make is, who do you think is going to win the Busch Clash? That's a tough one.
It's so tough for so many reasons, because it's the first race in the next gen car. It's at a quarter mile bull ring. That's a temporary track.
Yep.
Across the country.
You got to qualify. I mean, like, it's a small
heat races.
Field.
There's so much stuff going on. I'll throw a shot in the dark, and it is a shot in the dark because I really don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to say Tyler Reddick's going to win the Busch Clash.
I like
why?
That.
I don't know. But it's a shot in the dark. It's a short track. I think that he's aggressive enough to get up on in there. RCR has had a leg up on next gen development for as long as the program has been in existence, going back, I think, to 2017 maybe. Mm-hmm. So it's a complete guess, but I'll say Tyler Reddick just to be different.
I like that. I think that's definitely someone to watch, especially with how hot he finished last season. Definitely. And the growth we've seen in the couple seasons. Let's go Daytona 500.
My heart wants me to say Brad Keselowski, because especially seeing how close he came last year, how fired up he was after how last year ended. And then the offseason, moving to RFK, the new car, the new number, the new sponsor, everything, like a total rejuvenation of his career and just a different chapter. And he's really good at super speedways. Part of me wants to pick him, but I think that the drivers that were at this past next gen test at Daytona, they're going to have a leg up.
Yeah.
Because I think that the drivers that were not there, they're going to spend most of Speed Week, whether it's the duels, practice, qualifying, or part of the 500, they're going to spend a lot of that time learning the car, how it operates in the draft. What happens when you get side drafted? What happens? How do you suck up to the car in front? Do you work better with your own manufacturer? Are you able to push, etc.? So, I mean, my heart says Brad Keselowski, I feel like that'd be a great story, especially checking off one of his goals that he tweets out every year. But how can you go against Denny Hamlin, especially seeing how good he was at Daytona for the past 3, 4, 5 years with the Gen 6 car? I mean, I think he led laps in every single Daytona 500 going back almost half a decade. And even though this is a new car, he was at that next gen test at Daytona. He still knows what it takes to get it done. And everybody in the field knows that if the 11 cars behind them pushing, or if they're in front of him leading, they are going to be in a good spot. So they want to be with that 11 car. I think that plays into Denny Hamlin's favor. So I'll go with Denny to win his 4th Daytona 500. I know that's out on a limb, but what can you do?
No, that's great. I think that's a good pick. I mean, he's just dominant, and so is Keselowski. I mean, both of them are just dominant at super speedways. I was going to ask you about your champion, but I think what we should do is wait till a little bit in the kind of the beginning of the season. I will have you back on, and you and I can kind of, dissect what we saw and make a better prediction on who we think will be the champion, because literally, again, it's a shot in the dark right now.
It is.
But we got the Daytona 500 coming up. We got the Busch Clash coming up. So I like those picks. Man, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. I'm rooting for you with everything you do. We love the TikTok stuff, so keep it up. And the next time, I think the next time you're on the show, we might introduce you as just full-time TikTok star.
I don't know about all that. I don't know if I can afford financially to drop my other stuff to do TikTok full time, because that would make me an influencer. And I don't know if I want that title, but we'll see. You never say never,
Fair enough. So thank you so much for coming on again, everyone. This was Johnny on the Track. We had Davey Segal on the show. And hey, let's have a great Busch Clash, man. I'm so excited for that.
Raise a glass to the
Absolutely.
Busch Clash.
Yes, let's do it. All right, man. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You got it, man. Thanks for having me on.